Facebook and YouTube feeds, as well as the ESPN app. And you can download Fantasy Focus wherever you get your podcast. Happy Friday. Field, Matthew, Stephania, and Daniel here to talk a little bit about last night's game and get you ready for Week 1 on Sunday.
Week 1, baby.
We finally made it.
Week 1. We're here.
A lot of adjustments.
Can't wait.
Can't wait. However, there was just one thing I did not miss. Just one thing that I did not miss about football season. Staying up past midnight.
Oh, my God.
Not something I do.
Welcome to being an old man. I think
you're much more of a night owl than I am.
You just cruised into old man mode.
That's
nice
right.
job.
No, but you
Welcome
and I are very different that
Dip
way,
your toe in. Dip your toe in. The water's fine. Come on in.
Yeah, no, but
Come on and get into the hot tub. That's right.
You're the night owl here. You
I
can
am.
easily make it to 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. If I make it to 11 p.m. on a given night, it's a major miracle. Meanwhile, last night I'm sitting there, my phone in my hand, and I'm like, does that say 11:47?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not even
you didn't want to
upstairs
tune out
yet
of
in
last
bed.
night's game.
No, last night was amazing.
Yeah.
We try to watch every game, obviously,
Yeah.
but so at some point late in the season, there might be like Thursday night football where it's like the 4-19 team against the 2-27 team, and you're like, all right, maybe I'll
the score is 34-10 in the fourth, and you're just like, I get it.
Get a couple extra minutes of sleep tonight,
Yeah.
right? Whereas last night was first football game back, two great offenses.
Two great offenses.
I mean, just absolutely incredible. So we're going to get to the Bucs and the Cowboys in just a minute. We have so much to get to, so I just want to dive right into the news. And we start,
oh boy,
and just from bad to worst to awful in Baltimore. We're going to turn right to Stephania, as Stephania, not just J.K. Dobbins and Justice Hill, but now Gus Edwards also dealing with a major injury.
Yeah, Gus Edwards tore his ACL in practice yesterday, and it was a crazy day because they also lost their cornerback, Marcus Peters. And to have 2 ACL injuries in a practice back-to-back on top of what they already have. I mean, their entire backfield essentially has been decimated by injuries in this preseason. So just a lot of questions, a lot of sadness around Baltimore for obviously the loss of their key players, and they have to press forward. So it's basically next folks up, and they're adding to their running back room as we speak.
It's amazing. Again, literally a week ago, their top 3 running backs were all available, ready to go for this season. Now none of them are available for this season.
I can't tell you, and I don't mean to make light of the situation because I'm absolutely not. It's devastating for Gus Edwards. It's devastating for his family, for the Ravens, for their fan base. But I cannot tell you how many people, friends I heard from, and I saw this on Twitter a lot as well from my followers, saying that like either they drafted J.K. Dobbins and they drafted Gus Edwards as insurance, or like I had a friend that texted me saying like I drafted J.K. Dobbins after we did a draft early, and then I traded for Gus Edwards. Like the odds of having your 2 starting running backs tear an ACL before a game is played. I mean, what are the odds of that? Not to mention the depth of Justice Hill. And by the way, like again, we're fantasy focused here, obviously, no pun intended, but Marcus Peters is a big loss for them as well.
Sure it is.
I mean, like we're going to talk about the running backs, but that hurts the Ravens defense, which is a popular fantasy pick as well.
Yeah, we'll talk about them. By the way, they also already lost Rashad Bateman. He's on IR to begin the season. He's going to miss at least 3 games. He'll be back at some point, but still, it's been a tough go of it for Baltimore so far. So let's turn to the backfield, though, because that's where the most fantasy relevance takes place. Next man up is Tyson Williams. And if you're sitting here saying you know a lot about Tyson Williams, I'm saying you are either a South Carolina or BYU fan, or you're a liar because you don't know much about Tyson Williams.
Right.
You really don't if you're an NFL fan. He bounced around in college, undrafted free agent, made the roster, but this is not a player that we're super familiar with. He is the starter, though, now in Baltimore. And just to keep you updated on all the transactions, Le'Veon Bell, Devontae Freeman have both been signed to the practice squad. In the NFL, as of a couple of years ago, you can now add veterans to the practice squad, not just guys who are young players in the league. Latavius Murray will be signed to the 53-man roster to a 1-year deal. That'll happen at some point today. I can't imagine a scenario where more than 2 Ravens running backs carry fantasy relevance, Matthew. And the Le'Veon Bell and Devontae Freeman moves registered because of the names yesterday. But this feels to me like Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray, Fiend. That's it in terms of fantasy relevance. But how relevant is Tyson Williams?
So first off, I agree with you. Look, and we'll see how Tyson Williams do. We're all going to get to see him. Like he's going to be the starting running back on Monday Night Football when the Ravens take on the Las Vegas Raiders right here on ESPN. I'm a company man. So we'll see. And I think, listen, to your point, undrafted free agent rookie. So we'll see. I know the Ravens have a lot of confidence in him, and which is one of the reasons why they made some of the moves they did prior to any of these injuries. Like, Tyson Williams was generating a lot of buzz in camp, when they were all fully healthy. But if he falters, then you could see maybe one of those other veterans get run. But I agree with you. I think it's only 2 fantasy-relevant running backs. And if I am placing my chips on somebody that isn't Tyson Williams, I think Tyson Williams is the one right now.
Yeah.
It would be Latavius Murray. My feel is to the eye test.
Yeah.
Just literally to the eye test. Forget stats. To the eye test, he has the most left in the tank of those 3 running backs.
Oh, it's not close, by the way.
Right.
Like, I don't know what more you need to see from Le'Veon Bell to make you think that he's a factor in fantasy. And Devontae Freeman, we had the situation last year. He goes to New York because they had multiple injuries. What did they do? Nothing. It's a bad offensive line. I get that. But
I understand. But by the way, Wayne Gallman was
and he
productive.
was good when he got the chance.
Right. When he got the chance, they tried Freeman, and then they were using Alfred Morris some, and they were using Wayne Gallman. I think Tyson. So I have Tyson Williams as basically a borderline top 20 play.
For this week.
For this week. Because, again, think of their situation. Like, Latavius Murray isn't even in the building yet. Devontae Freeman just gets there. Le'Veon Bell signed up 2 days ago. Like, the odds of any of them getting more than a handful of snaps on Monday night is very unlikely. They also have Trenton Cannon. To the extent that a running back gets significant run on Monday night, it's going to be Tyson Williams. It's a good matchup against the Raiders here. I predicted 3 days ago on this show that Gus Edwards would score a touchdown on Monday Night Football. He was on my love list prior to the injury as well. And so I think Tyson Williams, listen, they're going to be able to run the ball effectively against the Raiders. That team is. That's what the Ravens do. So I get it. It's a little bit risky. But if somehow Tyson Williams is still available in your league, I can't imagine he is. But if he is, he absolutely needs to be picked up. And I think he's a borderline top 20 play on Monday night.
Am I crazy for thinking Latavius Murray has more season-long value?
You're not, because I think there is, if there's a 1-for-1 switch here, feels like Latavius Murray, more of a north-south runner, more of a between the tackles pounder.
He's a good player.
Is a good player. Yeah. Feels like he's more of what we expected after the J.K. Dobbins injury. The expectation is that Williams would be more of the third down back, more of the slashing type running back, and that Gus Edwards would be the pounder, would be the between the tackles pounder. And Latavius Murray fits that style much more than to the extent of what we know about Williams. I'm with you. Like, I haven't seen we've seen some college tape. We've seen, here and there, but like, couldn't tell you that I have a huge depth of knowledge on Tyson Williams just yet.
So let's get to one more piece of news as it pertains to injuries. And Stephania, listen, I'm more worried than it sounds like you are, and I've been worried about it since I first heard of the injury. But what's the latest on Austin Ekeler?
Well, I'll tell you what I've heard from the people I've spoken to.
Keep in mind, he's my fantasy ride or die. Don't say anything bad.
Look, I actually was yesterday saying that Austin Ekeler, given his tweet and the timing of it and the fact that he was still out at practice and observing, I take it to mean that it's not a serious injury. And I still believe that, although we don't know any details about how it happened, when it happened, etc. But I spoke with Shelley Smith, who is covering the Chargers for us this year, and she said that she cited a source as saying that the move was precautionary for him to be held out of practice. Yesterday, he did wear a uniform. He dressed in full uniform, rode a bike on the side, and watched practice. What that tells me is that he's staying engaged with the expectation that he's going to try to play, but this could be one of those situations where it comes down to the wire. Another thing that was important to me, given the significant injury he had last year where he missed 6 games, was, are we even talking about the same hamstring? Because I'm far more worried if he had a setback with the one he was injured last year. I'm told that it's the opposite side. So that, again, gives me a little bit less concern. Here would be my suggestion, and I do have him on some of my own fantasy teams, would be you make plans in the event that they decide to be conservative and hold him out. My feeling is that as of this moment, he's going to try to play. Obviously, today becomes a big day.
Hey, Stephania, all right, so we'll talk about making plans in a second, but I think this is a very important thing because I think some of the concern is that this is a guy who missed significant time last year with a hamstring injury, and I know you're saying it's on the opposite leg. But you and I have talked about on this show many, many times about the fact that, hamstrings are soft tissue injuries, and we see them come up again, and it's the first week of practice. Like, this isn't a week 5 thing where it's like precautionary. Like, it's the first practice, Wednesday and Thursday, the first 2 days of practice in week 1, and he can't get out there. Like, That doesn't raise
Well-
any red flags for you at all, given, and again, like, you know me, like, who's a bigger supporter of Austin Ekeler than me? But I'm just saying, like, doesn't that it raises some red flags for me, and no one loves Ekeler more than I do, but I'm like, wow, he can't get out there for week 1?
Well, you have to look at timing and management, right? So he's been going through all of training camp with no issues. And if you're the medical staff, you're thinking about what's the smartest thing to do? Do you actually need to be involved in practice for these couple of days? Or can you watch and pay attention to what's going on? And if you're ready to go, you go. And I think the holding out is in case, you don't want to make something that's small worse. The other thing I would say is, go back and look at all the guys who've had hamstring strains during preseason. There's a bunch of them. So I do think the explosion on the concern about this was a bit over what it should be for the level of what I'm gauging the injury issue to be. But I understand from the fantasy player perspective where it makes you nervous about what to do on Sunday. So again, make a plan.
Again, I look around the NFL. There's one player who's been a non-participant back-to-back days that matters in fantasy football. One, right? It's Austin Ekeler.
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, it's significant news. We both agree, Matthew, that if he's out on Sunday, it's not as if one back just steps in and takes over for Austin Ekeler. But we think that if you had to choose a Chargers back, if you're pressed up against it, you play in a deep league, whatever the circumstances are, if you have the opportunity to play one, we would both play Justin Jackson.
Yeah, I agree with that. But to your point, I think it's going to be a bit of a committee, right? So you've got Josh Kelly there. You've got Larry Roundtree, the rookie. So I think it's going to be a bit of a committee. And by the way, jokes aside, even though I'm wearing an Ashburn syndrome, the only cure, FYI, is a Super Bowl. But I think this is a very tough matchup.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, again, all homerism aside, like, this is a really tough matchup, and you're going to get a running back that doesn't have a clear path to, we think it's going to be Jackson if you have to pick one, but I think in an ideal world, especially in a week where there's no buys, right? I mean, you should have full health. I think you're better off with whoever your number 3 running back is than going to the waiver wire and picking up a Chargers running back. But I agree with you that if you're forced to start a Chargers running back if Eckler's out, it is, in fact, Justin Jackson.
Justin Jackson available in 90% of leagues. So
No surprise there.
Yep.
Right.
All right,
But it's not a 1-for-1.
Nope.
Let's do our best to get through the
Yeah.
Thursday night football game quickly. And again, it was a great game. The Bucs ended up winning this game with a late field goal. You give Tom Brady 84 seconds. There's about 83 seconds too much time for him to come back. Tom Brady does Tom Brady stuff. I'm just going to quickly give you the highlights and then maybe like 1 or 2 takeaways here. Because again, we'll have so much time to dive into this next week. And people watch this game. They have.
Oh, yeah.
They know exactly what took place last night. But Dak Prescott, over 400 passing yards, 27.4 fantasy points. Zeke, as we told you, very limited yesterday. 5.9 points, 2 catches, but only 33 rushing yards. Tony Pollard actually outscored him with 8.3 fantasy points. Amari Cooper was like, don't forget about me. 13 catches, 2 touchdowns, 38.9 fantasy points. CeeDee Lamb, who had a couple of drops, by the way.
Yeah. One of Fields' favorites.
Yeah, and he was great for fantasy last night, 23.4 fantasy points. He left some plays out there.
He did.
No doubt about that. And then Michael Gallup gets hurt. So I want to ask Stephania about that in just a second. So for the Cowboys, Matthew, just if you had one big takeaway, maybe 1.5 big takeaways from last night.
I want to trade for Ezekiel Elliott.
I agree. Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of managers out there panicking. I saw a lot of panic on Twitter. The thing about Ezekiel Elliott is he played 63 snaps. Tony Pollard played 29. I think, remember, Zach Martin was out of this game, right? It's one of, if not the best defensive line in football. Dak Prescott threw 58 times in this game. 58. I think Mike McCarthy and his coaching staff basically looked at this and says, we're not going to be successful running up the middle. We're going to win on the edges and passing the ball. And they feel like Tony Pollard may be a better pass catcher or more effective in that scheme that they're using. But honestly, he was on the field a lot. And to the eye test field, I get it. The box score does not do any justice. And if you started Ezekiel Elliott, like I did in a couple leagues, you're like, all right, let me see how I can make this up on Sunday. But I thought to the eye test, I thought he looked good. I thought he looked slim. I thought he looked fast. I thought he had the burst. He looked like Zeke. He actually looked to me better than he did last year. I mean, again, just then he runs into 3 people. And by the way, the other thing is that if Blake Jarwin could block, he has a touchdown, and I think the narrative on Ezekiel Elliott is a lot different. Like, he walks into the end zone if Blake Jarwin hits that block.
Yeah, that was
so
tough
anyway, I think there's going to be a lot of fantasy managers that are freaked out and panicked about Ezekiel Elliott, and I'm here to tell you that's one of the best offenses in football. Zeke's going to get fed. Yes. Anyone, if you're watching this and you're in my league and you're in a league with me and you have Ezekiel Elliott, make an offer.
Daniel, okay, Daniel, all good there. So, Stephania, though, before we get to the Bucs, Michael Gallup left the game last night with an ankle injury. Any update on that?
All we know is that he's being reevaluated when they get back to Texas, which is today on Friday. So expect an update later today.
He was playing plenty. Again, this was an interesting game flow game. The schedule gets decidedly easier for Dallas. I mean, it can't get any harder than the Buccaneers defense, which is just outstanding. So I think there is plenty of reasons to be optimistic about everything you saw from Dallas. Quickly, in 2 seconds or less, Dak Prescott, welcome back. You, my friend, are incredible.
By the way, if you were worried about his shoulder, the 58 passes pretty much took that out of the way. And everything I needed to see, I saw last night. He got hit. He had to move. He stepped up in the pocket. He was confident. Done.
And by the way, props to Stephania Bell. We like to give her a hard time, but I just want to give some props to Stephania Bell, who throughout the entire preseason said, I'm not worried about Dak. I'm not worried about Dak. Everyone else was like, he missed practice with a shoulder, MRI. What are we doing? Stephania, I'm not worried about Dak. I'm not worried about Dak. And one of the reasons I had him as my number 3 quarterback in fantasy coming to this year is because when Stephania Bell tells me she's not worried, I'm not worried.
Credit his PT, Luke Miller, who is the one who approached it like a baseball injury.
Okay, moving on to the Buccaneers. Tom Brady had over 27 fantasy points himself. This just in, Tom Brady is still good. Really could have been 31 fantasy points. He had an interception, which was not.
Was there
really
any doubt? Like when they got the ball back with 1:40, you're like, well, this game's done.
Of course it was.
I mean, you were just like,
of course. So Tom Brady throws 2 picks last night. One at the end of the first half on a Hail Mary. The second one is a screen pass to Leonard Fournette that literally goes in and out of his mitts. Tom Brady is just fine. He's got 4 straight regular season games with over 345 passing yards. The backs we'll talk about in a second because they were both, well, Ronald Jones is especially unproductive. He had 6 snaps. And was it yesterday on the podcast when I joked, like, you know what's going to happen is Ronald Jones is going to start the game, run well, fumble, and then we're not going to see him again until the following week.
Yeah.
I wish I were more assertive in that call, right?
Yeah.
It literally happened last night.
did.
He fumbles, and what happens? He goes to the bench, does not play again. Leonard Fournette, his day was salvaged because he had 5 sort of not garbage time, but just like late game, not garbage time, obviously. The game was very close, but just like 5 catches for 27 yards. It was all dump-offs, right? There was nothing super impressive about those 10.9 fantasy points. But the 3 wide receivers, Mike Evans has 3 catches for 24 yards on 6 targets. Chris Godwin had 9 catches on 14 targets for 105 yards, a touchdown. Another night that could have been much better than just 23.5 fantasy points. And then Antonio Brown, 5 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. One more to mention here. Gronk, 8 for 90, 2 touchdowns on 8 targets. Gronk looked very Gronky last night. Yes.
Yes.
So big takeaways from the Bucs offense. I think one of the running backs and one of the pass catchers.
Okay, so real quickly, first off, like you don't want a victory lap after week 1, but you and I all throughout the preseason said we think Antonio Brown is going to be the comeback player of the season and is like one of the best values in fantasy. And so that worked out very, very well. I was on Stephen A's World yesterday, and Stephen A yelled at me for having Antonio Brown on my fantasy team in his league. That also worked out. Anyway, but what I would say here is similar to Ezekiel Elliott, I'm not worried about Mike Evans. People are going to see all the targets to Antonio Brown, all the targets to Chris Godwin, and then we're like, where was Mike Evans? You know what I mean? And they're going to panic. Here's the thing on Mike Evans, okay? Through 5 games last season, he had 10 catches. Remember week 1 last year at New Orleans, he had 1 catch for 1 yard. Now, it happened to be for a touchdown, so it sort of bailed you out here. Gronk's not going to catch 2 touchdowns every single week. Evans is still going to be a big part of the red zone. 6 different. This is sort of Mike Evans' game. There are times when he just sort of disappears because they do have a lot of weapons. There were 6 different games last year where he finished outside the top 45 wide receivers. 6 different weeks he wasn't even a top 45 wide receiver, and yet at the end of the year, wide receiver 16.
Yeah, I think a lot of them came early in the season, by the way. He was red hot down the stretch.
1,000%.
So,
I'm not worried about Mike Evans. It is what it is. This is one of these things, like, if you have Mike Evans, you just need to start him, and as long as he's active, you're playing him in every game, and just don't worry about it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I understand it's frustrating, but there was a lot of rhetoric this preseason. He had his best training camp ever, his best shape of his life. And I know that every player comes into training camp in the best shape of his life, but like the Bucs literally have known him since the day that he was drafted. I take some of that with not a grain of salt. I take that seriously.
But and one of these things, and Field, you know this from having worked for the Patriots before earlier in your career, when Brady was there. One of the things Tom Brady does is he makes sure everyone gets involved.
Everybody eats.
If there was a way to place a wager on who gets the first touchdown pass next week for the Buccaneers, give me Mike Evans.
Yeah. No, you know, I actually
go ahead.
for next week, maybe let's revisit this. I wonder if Gronk's a sell high. next week.
Yeah.
Just, and we'll talk about it more. I'm not saying go.
We
out,
want to move
field
on, but
offers
like
now,
I'm with you. But
interesting.
we may
food
very
for
well
thought.
we very well may have seen his best game of the year.
But the only thing I will say, he's the only tight end that matters there.
That's
O.J. Howard,
true.
6 snaps last night for O.J. Howard. I know he's coming off the Achilles, but still, I thought he played more than that. We're going to talk about injury updates, and there are plenty, including Saquon Barkley in just a moment. But did you know that Tony Romo is a motivational speaker now? How about that? All this football season, Tony and Corona are remotivating football fans to live the game day good life. Let Tony unlock your football fan potential at romotivation.com. There you can launch an augmented reality experience that will put Tony in your living room or at the bar next to you while you watch the game. It's true, you can be better at watching football. Let Romo and Corona show you how to live the game day good life. Visit romotivation.com now. Please drink responsibly. Corona Extra Beer, imported by Crown Imports in Chicago, Illinois.
Do you own or rent your home?
Yep.
Sure you do.
Yeah, I do.
And I'll bet it can be real hard work too, huh? But you know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. That's a good thing too because you already have so much to do around the house. So go to geico.com, get a quote, and see just how much you could save. It's Geico easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
Let's get to our injury updates, and that means time for Stephania. Nobody better to get into the latest around the NFL than Stephania Bell, and I think really the injury that we've talked about the most this preseason, Stephania, has been Saquon Barkley. What is the latest on Saquon's status for Week 1?
Well, certainly we've been hearing all week that there's a lot of optimism that he'll be cleared to play on Sunday. I still think if he does play that the volume will be controlled in his first outing. He still has not been a full participant in practice. So it's just fascinating to me how everybody's so, exuberant about him being 100% and he's got yet to be a full participant in any practice this year. But if he does what the Giants appear to have planned for him, and if they don't veer from that, then I think he can continue to improve as the season goes on. I'm still not fully convinced he plays Sunday, but if he does it, I think it'll be a controlled amount.
Well, just to add some context, Joe Judge just said a little while ago, absence and unforeseen setback, he's playing on Sunday. So it sounds like there's expectation he will be out there. As you said, they don't veer off their plan that they've been executing up to this point. But whether he plays at 100% is a much different question. And Matthew, I think this probably comes down to what we've been talking about throughout the preseason with Saquon Barkley is that he plays, you're probably pot committed to playing Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
You just have to do it, right? And I understand that he's probably not going to play his full 100% allotment of snaps. He may not be as effective as he was earlier in his career as a runner, bad offensive line, et cetera, et cetera.
You're hoping for a touchdown. You're hoping for some Leonard Fournette like dump off passes.
I'm fine with that,
he could
right?
easily get 5, 6, 7 catches for 40 yards. You know what I mean?
That's enough, yeah.
Right?
More than enough, yeah.
Again, right? You're sort of pot committed at this point. I'm just outside my top 20. We have lower expectations for him, but if he's out there, chances are you're starting him.
All right, it's fine. Kenny Golladay, same team, same game, of course. He has been limited throughout training camp with a hamstring injury. Any update on whether he'll be a go on Sunday?
I think they're hopeful that they'll have him. Look, he's only been practicing for about a week, and he's still in that limited status for the week that he's been back at practice, nursing a hamstring injury all camp. So we were talking earlier about Ekeler. To me, this is a far more worrisome hamstring injury where you're down for multiple weeks, and he has this history of ending last season, missing the second half essentially with a hip issue. So I'm definitely a little nervous about Kenny Golladay, but it sounds like the Giants are hopeful they'll have him on the field Week 1.
That would be good right there for them. They paid him a lot of money this offseason. But Matthews, outside my top 30 this week, this is a player who, as we know, has been a little bit hit or miss throughout his career when he has been on the field. Now he's coming to a game against a very, very good defense, and he's banged up too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even lower than you do in our ranks. We both have him outside the top 30. He made my hate list this week. Love Kenny Golladay, the player. Don't love him this week. To your point, bad offensive line, questionable quarterback play. He's been banged up. The strength of the Broncos defense is that secondary, and they're obviously going to focus a lot of attention on Kenny Golladay. This feels like, in a standard league where you only play 2 wide receivers, this feels like a bench to me.
Yeah, feels the same way there. Stephania, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we know, got hurt when the Chiefs played on Monday Night Football. It was a Friday night game, but that's preseason for you against the Cardinals. Is he good to go on Sunday night against the Browns?
Yes, Andy Reid had already said he expected him to be good to go, and he's been fully practicing all of this week.
Matthew, I don't have much analysis other than what I've been saying throughout the preseason. He's like a comfortably ranked low-end RB2 for me. I have him at 16 in my ranks right now. That includes taking out Zeke Elliott from last night. Actually, Zeke may have been behind him. But anyways, the point is, like, he's a mid to low end RB2 for me.
This game, Chiefs-Browns, features two of the most fascinating players in fantasy football this year.
Odell and him?
CEH and Odell, because we know the talent. Both guys could literally be top 3 at their position. Both guys could also be, if CEH gets the goal line work, he absolutely could.
Okay.
The lead running back of an Andy Reid offense prior to last year has always been basically top 10, and that
I'm just saying,
offense
like,
is going to
I don't feel super confident at the goal line work.
I'm with you. I think they prefer Darrell Williams there.
Right.
I actually don't think he's going to, which is why I also have him as a mid-tier RB2, why I had him as a mid-tier RB2 in the pre-draft process. But I'm just saying the range of outcomes of both these players, both him and Odell Beckham Jr., is massive because they both have insane talent. They have both disappointed in their fantasy careers. Right now, I have him at running back 17, to your point, is it's like, that's the question mark. We know he'll be involved in the passing game, but does he get the goal line work, or does Kansas City do what they did last year, which is like, we don't need to run. We've got Patrick Mahomes. I mean, like, we're going to figure it out. We'll be fine.
They're going to throw a touchdown to like a left tackle on Sunday night. That's how it works in Kansas City. That's what they're going to do. Orlando Brown, welcome to the team. Here's a touchdown for you. All right, let's go to DeAndre Swift, Stephania, in Detroit, who has been limited throughout training camp as well.
Yeah, a groin injury that kept him out of practice essentially until about a week and a half ago. And it was interesting because it was Dan Campbell's words shortly before that got everyone really nervous about what DeAndre Swift would be doing if he'd even be playing in week 1. He was concerned about his conditioning, said, I don't know how much we'll get out of him. And it certainly made you think that even if he was out there, the workload would be less than full. Well, he's been back in practice. He's been fully practicing all of this week, I think, trying to make a point. So it certainly sounds like DeAndre Swift is going to play. Dan Campbell actually expressed confidence that he would. Again, the timeshare between him and Jamal Williams, especially in this first game back, having had the groin injury, that's what we don't know.
We will find out. And one thing I will say is I'm happy that the Lions, and this could change, I suppose, in the next day or so, did not sign another veteran running back this preseason. They struck me as a team that maybe could have considered it.
Sure.
I thought Latavius Murray might make some sense there with the familiarity of Dan Campbell. But I've got DeAndre Swift just outside my top 20 backs this year, Matthew. Probably my biggest concern for this week is, one, just like we don't know exactly how we'll play within this offense. And two, 49ers, this could be like, sorry, Daniel, like 21-3 at halftime. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me at all. I think so. I have DeAndre Swift at 21. I'm sorry, I'm at 24 this week, but I like him and Jamal Williams again lower than you would normally play him. But I actually think those guys, because both guys should be involved in the passing game, and I do think I'm with you. I think San Francisco probably kills them, and so I think there's some junk time. I think there's some dump offs. That's a fierce, defensive front for the 49ers, and we know that the Lions are supposed to have a decent offensive line here, but they're going to get to Jared Goff. Jared Goff does not do well under pressure. At least he didn't in L.A. And so my expectation is both Swift and Jamal Williams are both good pass-catching running backs. And I think in PPR formats, both guys will be reasonably viable this week, in a flex kind of way.
So I don't know if anybody, I don't know if Daniel and Stephania are aware of this yet, but I have been told that there has been confirmation that Daniel and Stephania, their two favorite teams, are playing against each other.
Yeah.
They have made a wager already. And Stephania wandered into the studio earlier today with like these bedazzled Gucci sunglasses. Probably worth more than my house, right?
Yeah, true. Of course.
Meanwhile, Daniel
listen, Stephania has to walk by paparazzi every single time she comes into ESPN. So she has to get through it. It is what it is.
So
right?
she has those.
Her security detail just doesn't always get all of them, right?
Yes. And Daniel has a sweet motorcycle. So I've been told that if the Lions win, Daniel gets the sunglasses. Yes, the Gucci sunglasses. If the 49ers win, Stephania gets to ride the motorcycle for the rest of the season to work.
That's accurate.
With the sunglasses?
With the sunglasses.
Yes.
Keep the
I
sunglasses.
mean, you've got to wear a helmet, but you can wear the sunglasses under the helmet.
Of course, I'm a physical therapist.
What else? Are you guys going to make a wager or no? Is this a friendly?
Absolutely. Field, what do you mean make a wager?
What if the Lions win? Stephania has to grow a big bushy beard.
Yeah.
Not sure she's capable of that.
Yeah.
Well,
That would not be.
that's the
no.
joke.
No.
What's the line? How much are you going to give me, Stephania?
Oh,
Stephania doesn't like to give lines.
Don't get started.
Stephania doesn't
go
like
off
to
the
give
rails.
lines.
You want to
Good
keep
luck.
this podcast
Yeah,
on
this is-
track. Do not,
please,
do not
Daniel.
bring this up.
Have you listened to this podcast, Stephania? This is why I never bet with
Never.
Stephania. She won't give lines. Yeah.
No, okay. What's the line currently?
8
Do we know?
points.
8
points?
That's not
Oh.
enough. I need 11.
Wow.
But you can't
just
negotiate
He's a
that.
bargainer. He's a
Yeah,
bargainer.
look
I
at
love
that.
it, Daniel.
Wow.
Well done. Hold your ground. All right. We can't wait for
8
that
points.
game.
Yep. I'll take it.
Daniel.
You
8
good?
points. So what's the bet?
All right, I'll take it.
We'll
There you go.
figure out the
Yeah.
wager. We'll figure out
We'll
the
figure it out,
prize-
make it official, and
prizes
we'll
later.
let you guys know.
By the end of the podcast, we'll tell you.
Let's talk about some committees this weekend that we want to figure out what they are going to look like once the games actually begin, which means it's time for us to go for two, brought to you by Truly Hard Seltzer. And in that game, we were just talking about the 49ers and the Detroit Lions. The question is, can you start both 49ers running backs against Detroit? I say definitively no. Matthew, what do you say?
I'd say yes.
Really?
They're going to kill him.
Trey Sermon?
Trey Sermon. I'm in the War Room League against Mina Kimes this week. I'm starting Trey Sermon against her.
Wow, I love it.
Again, it's a 16-team league.
I wouldn't do it.
Trey Sermon, who you sniped from me, by the way, in the draft.
I know.
Wouldn't do
Just
it.
saying.
By
I
the
think
way, in the draft room, Stephania said when I went back to back with Trey Lance and Trey Sermon, so that way I didn't have to figure. I always mess up their names. I'll call Trey Lance Trey Sermon and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I drafted those two back to back before it got back to Stephania.
Wouldn't do it.
Stephania says in the chat, she goes, "I am never speaking to you again."
So I have two regrets.
Which I said,
yeah, which-
promises.
So
look,
two regrets for me in the preseason.
I just think they're gonna. I think they're gonna run all over Detroit,
Yeah.
and I think both guys get significant work.
Really?
I think it's a committee.
I
think
don't-
it is.
no,
I think
no,
it.
no, I don't think so.
You think it's all Mostert?
I think it's very much mostly Mostert to begin the season, and then we'll see beyond that.
You have Trey Sermon at running back 42.
I might be too high.
Wow.
Yeah.
I say Trey Sermon's a top 40 fantasy running back this week.
I say-
I'll
yes,
say he's a
perfect.
You know what? You want
Let's
to do
do
that
it.
one?
Yeah, let's do it
Okay,
for this
fine.
week, yeah.
I'll take that. I say Trey Sermon is a top 40 fantasy running back in week 1.
I say Trey Sermon is not a top 40 running back in week 1. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Smells
That's
like a win for me.
That feels.
That
I mean,
feels
I have
so-
it-
that
I
feels
have
like
it- it's a
Matthew's
trap
going to
bet.
walk
I'll be honest with
away.
you.
Yeah.
I have him at 32, and I think I might be too low on Trey Sermon.
Yeah, no.
We both agree on Mostert, though, right?
Mostert,
Mostert's
my two
Raheem
regrets
must
from the
start.
preseason. I have two regrets from this preseason.
Yeah.
Not being more bullish on Robbie Anderson for the full year and not being more bullish on Raheem Mostert, at least to begin the season and maybe for the full year. My two regrets in fantasy this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I had Mostert at 22 among my running backs in my preseason ranks, and I thought that might still be too low.
Yeah,
But you
I
know
know.
that I've been high on Trey Sermon all throughout the process. He's one of my big sleepers. And by the way, I have Robbie Anderson in the War Room League. Let's talk.
Let's do it.
Talk a little trade.
Love it.
Yeah.
I'll tell
I'm
you
into
what,
that.
though, Field.
Yeah.
I think we all agree, correct, that this is basically, if you're in a pigskin pick'em league, this is like a free square for just to take the 49ers this week, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it depends. Are we talking about like lines or no lines?
No
Like, I get
lines.
no 8 points. Okay.
Because we're doing pigskin pick'em, right? For the
I don't know. Maybe Field
As a
can tell
matter
us
of
right
fact,
about it.
Matthew, what Daniel was trying to lead us into
Yeah.
is pick every NFL matchup for a shot at prizes with Pigskin Pick'em, presented by Truly Hard Seltzer. Play at ESPN.com/Pigskin Pick'em or on the ESPN Fantasy app.
If you search within groups, if you go into the Pigskin Pick'em game, we have a group. It is called Fantasy Focus. You can find it in there. It's got, 8,500 people, maybe 10,000 by now. But we are definitively a group. It's got our little logo in there. So get in there.
Is it with the lines or without the lines?
Without the lines.
We're doing without the lines. That's good, and I'll tell you why. Because I made my picks last night.
Yeah.
And I picked Tampa Bay to win,
Yeah.
but I picked Tampa Bay to cover as well, which they did not.
Ooh.
Which they should have if,
Yeah.
Godwin doesn't fumble. They would have covered if
But
Godwin doesn't.
the Cowboys missed 2 kicks that they shouldn't have missed, right?
Yeah, but that I counted on.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Yes, of
Hey,
course.
come on. That's Cowboys mentality. That stuff I knew, but come on, Godwin. One thing I will say here, Mostert and Sermon both on the love list. Love-hate came out yesterday.
week one? Yeah,
both of them
I'm not so sure,
on
man.
on the love list. Well, listen.
We'll find out on
We'll find
Sunday.
out on Monday. Well, I mean, whatever. We'll talk about it on Monday. We'll find
Yes,
out on
correct.
Sunday.
All right, so please join
I
the
like to watch
Pigskin
the games on
Pick'em.
tape delay.
Do you
Picture
record them
Matthew
on your VCR?
with a bunch of VCRs just stacked up, and they're all recording different games,
exactly
and he
right.
rewrites the name on the outside.
Yeah, exactly. No, come on, I'm
Beta
VCRs.
tapes.
Please,
It's like
please,
a serial
come on,
killer's
stop it.
basement.
I'm not that old school.
NFL footage.
They're all on my
player?
TiVo. They're on my TiVo.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, they're on my TiVo. Come on.
Doesn't he get a DVD player?
I have a bunch of TiVos.
Yeah.
But the early TiVos that only could record like 12 hours.
Yes.
I have,
Right.
So I have like a bunch of the I have like 5 TiVos stacked up on each other so I can watch the games leisurely.
Oh, God, I love it. All right, let's go to the Cardinals and the Titans. Titans last year struggled against the run. They struggled against running backs in general in fantasy. Chase Edmonds, he's the highest ranked of the Cardinals running backs. But, Matthew, you're a little bit different. You have Chase Edmonds pretty closely ranked just ahead of James Conner. I have James Conner and Chase Edmonds 11 slots apart. Daniel has them 13 slots apart. So I'm at 21, Daniel at 20, you at 26 for Chase Edmonds. But you've got James Conner at just 29. You're pretty. Do you think this is a split to begin the year?
I think it's two things. First off, I think it is a split to begin the year.
Okay.
I do.
Yep.
To date, and Chase Edmonds, whenever Chase Edmonds gets a chance, he flashes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's part of hashtag free Chase Edmonds. It does not seem like it's gonna be. It's about to be.
Got it.
But listen, I mean, you heard me talk earlier about Mike McCarthy just saying, like, I'm not worried about Zeke. But I did have, when we saw Tony Pollard, like, initially, I'm just like, the man who made me inspired free Aaron Jones, am I going to have to say free Ezekiel Elliott?
Yeah.
But luckily, I think Jerry Jones is going to handle that. Like, I'm paying this guy $90 million. Like, use him. Anyway, back to Chase Edmonds and James Conner here. To date, it does not seem like Cliff Kingsbury wants to use Chase Edmonds in an every down bell cow role.
Correct.
Okay? If they get in close, I believe James Conner has a better shot at a touchdown. I think in any given week, James Conner will have a better chance at scoring than Chase Edmonds. Kenyon Drake could not have been less effective at the goal line last year, and yet Kenyon Drake was top 2 in the NFL in goal-to-go rushing attempts last year. Like, they kept giving it to Kenyon Drake when they got in close, even though he wasn't particularly effective. And they wouldn't give Edmonds the chance. James Conner much more effective at the goal line. So I think every week he's got a better chance to score, including this week against the Titans. And I think it's going to be much more of a committee than fantasy managers that have Chase Edmonds on their team are comfortable with.
There are not too many things that I enjoy in life more than trolling you on Twitter.
Fair.
I'm so ready for the week that, like, Chase Edmonds goes 5 straight games, doing absolutely nothing for fantasy. So you start pounding the table. James Conner, like, is the lead of your love-hate column.
Yeah.
Like, I love him. Fantasy
Right,
Football
right.
Now,
And
Sports
then-
Center segment.
Right, yeah.
And then Chase Edmonds has like 4 touchdowns. It's
Right,
going to be
that will happen.
so beautiful. I cannot wait.
That will be
As
happening.
You know,
I'll
be.
reignite my feud with the Cardinals Twitter.
Yes.
I'm glad you guys
their
are
social media team.
All right, let's get to the Broncos and the Giants. We talked about the Giants running backs earlier with Saquon Barkley. Let's talk about the Broncos now. Matthew, we all have Melvin Gordon ahead of Javonte Williams. We all also have them just a little bit ahead of Javonte Williams. It feels like this was one where no matter what you saw this preseason, I don't know what I could have seen this preseason that would have convinced me that Javonte Williams was definitely going to have the job right away, and vice versa, if that makes sense, because Melvin Gordon didn't play. Javonte Williams looked solid when he did play, but still, Melvin Gordon, like, the fact that he wasn't playing suggested the Broncos still value him enough that, like, we can't afford to have him out there and get hurt.
One of the things that is really challenging when you're doing fantasy football analysis the way Field and I do is that you have to assume that coaches are going to do rational things. That doesn't always happen. But the expectation here, at least for me, is, are you okay, Daniel? What's going on?
I don't count. I'm not a fantasy football analyst. What about Stephania?
Stefania's our injury analyst.
What am I? What am I?
What are you, Daniel? Let's
Stephania!
define you.
You're like,
Let's define you. Let's define you. Let's define you.
Let's
Okay, what
define
are
you.
you? I don't know. What are
Fantasy
you?
analyst.
Thank you.
And
Let's
so is Stephania.
I mean, like, whatever. Like, really, you're going to make a point of this? Because, like, I could have. What about Mike Clay or Tristan Cockcroft or
These
Eric
two
Kilburn
are.
or Matt
listen,
Bowen?
here's the
There's
deal.
a million people at the company
Who
that
are
do
all
fantasy
fantasy
football
analysts.
analysis, and they're all terrific.
Right, and you're the senior one because you're old.
Because I am
the rest
very
of us
old.
are juniors.
Accurate.
Because I'm very old. I was merely saying because Field and I are currently on the couch, and we're the ones in the shot talking about Melvin
You
Gordon.
need to be on the
You, I
couch.
was just going to say, you opened the door on that one.
How
You're on the
is this
couch.
show
That
over yet?
joke. That was a
Is
redeeming
this
joke
show
for the
over?
first one.
Is this show over yet? When can I quit? When do I get to
minutes,
leave?
and then you get to
Did
go
you
spend the
see
rest
it
of the day
already?
watching Price is
I'm so
Right.
sorry, guys.
Wheel of Fortune on the show.
I started
Yeah.
this. This is my fault.
It
I'm
is.
so
Someone-
sorry.
Thirsty Kyle, do me a favor. Text Mike Clay and see if he's available for the next 17 weeks. I just need you to do that.
You
Yep,
had a good point. I never should have
interrupted.
interrupted. I'm so sorry, Matthew. I was just trying to
I
poke
derail
fun.
myself.
I know.
And you,
I was trying to
your
poke
whole
fun.
job as a producer is trying to keep me
I'm
on the
not
rails.
sorry, Daniel. I love that
And
you
then
just
you
did that.
and then you just completely derail me. Anyway,
Where were you at?
How dare you interrupt him when he's
Thank
the
you.
only one capable of interrupting on this show?
Listen, Stephania, there's very few things in this world I'm good at. Don't take that away from me.
Nobody
That's
makes
right.
it blood
Interrupting
his
other
own
people is
blood.
all I've got.
Yeah.
What are those things?
Interrupting other people.
True.
Early bird specials.
Yes. True.
Oh, you mean blue plate specials?
Yeah, blue plate specials, whatever.
Yeah, I thought you were saying like getting up early in the morning. I was
No,
like,
but those early bird specials are like when you're
Yeah,
when you're a
that's-
senior
my
citizen.
bad.
you go-
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the phrase.
Anyways,
Anyway,
speaking of, we were talking about.
Anyway.
We were talking about.
Javonte
that's pretty
Williams.
much it. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
And coaching girls soccer. Once again, I am my daughter. We first practice tomorrow.
Nice.
So just so you know,
Is that right?
My daughter's under 10 girls soccer team returning for the fall season. We went undefeated last year. The
Wow.
Yellow Jackets. I'm just going to say
Wow.
undefeated, first
Lot of
place, no big
pressure.
deal. NBD.
Wow.
And we return about half our starters. So
Okay.
just like anyway,
Wow.
like I was texting
Lot of
this morning.
turnover.
Do your
John, I was
girls-
texting with my co-coach John. Him and I were texting this morning about what we're working
John's
with here.
like, geez, I can't believe I started
No,
like Evans
John's
last
great.
night.
John's great.
Yeah. All right, let's move
Anyway,
forward.
so listen,
Javonte Williams, quick thought
Javonte
here.
Williams, very quickly. All I'm going to say is, what I was going to say is, when you're trying to do fantasy football analysis, you assume or you hope that there's going to be rational coaching, and we think Melvin Gordon is still good, still has a lot left in the tank. Maybe not a lot left in the tank, but for this year, I don't believe that, barring an injury, that he's just going to all of a sudden step aside for Javonte Williams. Could Williams become the 1A to Gordon's 1B later in the season? But certainly for this week, we all agree Gordon over Williams, but we think it's a committee. In a matchup that I don't think is as good as people might initially think. Yeah. Oh, the Giants are bad, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, they're good defense. Good defense, good
exactly.
defensive front as well. Let's get to the
Right.
Raiders. Monday Night Football going up against the Baltimore Ravens, as we've talked about plenty. Two Raiders running backs. I think it's clearly Josh Jacobs as the one. We all agree on that. But, Matthew, he actually makes your hate list this week.
He does. Like, first off, Ravens, yes, they lost Marcus Peters in the secondary, but that's a really good defense.
It is a very good defense.
It's a really
yeah.
good defense. And the other problem is that it's still a really good offense. I get it. They have issues in the running back room at the moment. But my expectation here is that the Ravens win this, right? And the problem is that Josh Jacobs is fairly touchdown dependent. He's not involved in the passing game. So if they get down in this game, they're not going to be coming back with Josh Jacobs. They still have, Kenyon Drake is there. Jalen Richard banged up?
Yes, he is banged up. That's why they've been
gonna
trying to
play
get a third,
right, a
running
third
back.
pass catching running back. But my point is that with Jalen Richard still on the roster, the expectation is that I think Jacobs is going to be used significantly in the passing game here. And when Josh Jacobs gotten under 20 touches, that's a big number. For his career, when he's gotten under 20 touches, he averages 10.5 fantasy points per game. I'm at running back 25 here. He needs a touchdown to pay off for you. There's always a chance that he falls into the end zone here, but my expectation is that he struggles fantasy-wise Monday night.
Okay, there you have it. I have more optimism. I've got him at RB 18 in my Week 1 ranks. Last one here, Matthew, is the Rams against the Bears. You and I both have Darrell Henderson, almost 10 spots ahead of Sony Michel this week. I think. And by the way, Henderson makes the others receiving votes on the love list here. I think the big question is just going to see two things for me is, one, how much of a workload Henderson gets, and two, Sony Michel may be more involved in the passing game than he has been in previous years in New England. Those are the two things I'm watching for.
Which is completely fair, and that would certainly change my perspective on Darrell Henderson. My thought on Henderson is that I think, similar to what we saw actually last night in the Thursday night game, that I think Sean McVay is going to approach this game similar to how Mike McCarthy did, which is like, I don't think I'm going to be able to run up the middle. I don't think I'm going to be able to run between the tackles against the Bears here. So you know what? Where I think I'm going to have success is on the edge. And my expectation is that if the Rams want to attack the edge, that Darrell Henderson is better suited for that than Sony Michel. He's at least, from what we've seen so far, the better pass catcher. He's more familiar in the system, obviously, as well. He's more likely to me than Sony Michel to also break off a big play here. So I think because of people are like, oh, Chicago, I'm staying away. I think, again, similar to how like Tony Pollard got used last night, I think Henderson's more involved. I think they're passing a lot in this game, and I think Henderson's significantly involved in the passing game.
All right. We're going to get to more love-hate in just a minute. Matthew's column, it's up now, right? How did I miss this yesterday?
I don't know.
It was dubbed by me. I had a couple.
There was a
well,
football
listen,
game. Sorry, we were all watching football.
and Gus Edwards. I mean, like there was a lot of news yesterday.
I had a couple off-the-grid hours yesterday, too, so I will go back and find that right now and have a chance to read it in full. But before we get to your love-hate, Fantasy Focus Football is brought to you by Gum Out. To get peak performance, a lot of people try the latest techniques, technology, and even ingredients. When it comes to performance enhancement for your car, the most exciting development is Gum Out with Carbon Clear. Carbon Clear is potent. It's the most advanced fuel additive on the market. It's also their newest technology. Think of it like this. You've evolved your stat tracking, right? We do it here in fantasy. It's not just catches, yards, and touchdowns, right? It's tracking targets, yards after catch. We even talk about DVOA on occasion. So why not evolve your car's performance too? In fact, cars on Gum Out get better engine performance, increased fuel efficiency, and lower emissions. It only takes 2 minutes to pour Gum Out into a gas tank, so it's quick and easy to use. And it's not hard to find. You can get it all at mass retailers or your local auto parts store. So what are you waiting for? Get your car running right now with Gum Out. Now with Carbon Clear. Performance enhancement for your car.
Let's talk week 1 love-hate, Field.
Oh, okay. Got it. We can do that, Daniel, as we move to Matthew's love-hate column, which I am due to read after this show is over. We begin, and a reminder, I'll do it for you, Matthew. People should know this by now, but love-hate is not personal. It is always about how you feel about a player relative to his projection or his ranking.
But it's more about the matchup.
Yes,
more about the matchup than the player. It is not. I don't hate players. I hate their matchups, or I hate their projected points or their ADP, depending on when you read the column. And I don't love players either. I love their matchup.
Well, you might love Jalen Hurts, though, based on how you talked about him this preseason. I mean that in a good way. And Jalen Hurts makes your love list this week.
I do love Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts last year, final 4 games, 23 fantasy points per game, was a top 9 fantasy quarterback. He was doing that while throwing to former college quarterback and AAF superstar Greg Ward. Rookie Jalen Reagor, who was had missed half the season, was playing like as an 8th NFL game ever. Eagles are certainly healthier now, and it's a good matchup here against the Atlanta Falcons, who last year gave up the second most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. And I understand it's a new season, a new coach, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think the Falcons have done enough in the offseason here to improve their defense here. I actually think Jalen Hurts has a nice game here. Again, dual threat quarterback with the running, with the passing as well, in an impressive thing. A lot of people that are negative against Jalen Hurts point to his completion percentage last year, 52%. Quarter of his passes were 15 yards more downfield, which actually obviously affects completion percentage and accuracy. But I'm also telling you here that it sort of doesn't matter, that the volume will be there. And again, the fantasy points that he's going to get with his legs are so crucial. I think he has a monster game this week. I love him. I'm at QB6. I'm sorry, I'm at QB. It says there QB6. It's actually, I think, slightly higher. We did a pass on the ranks last night. Regardless, Jalen Hurts is on my love list, and I think he has a monster game. I don't know if you saw this. You haven't read my love-hate yet, but one of the things I let off my love-hate with was 5 lists of 5, kind of a quick version of my normal 10 lists of 10. One of my 5 lists of 5 was 5 bold predictions for the fantasy season.
Okay.
And one of my bold predictions was Jalen Hurts, #1 quarterback in fantasy.
Okay. There you go. I love
All
it.
in on Jalen Hurts.
Got to have a bold
this
prediction.
week and for the season.
By the way, I love when I posted my bold prediction from a couple of shows ago about Jonathan Taylor. Mm-hmm. People are like, dude, no way, Derrick Henry. I'm like, that's the point of a bold prediction.
That's the point of people don't.
Or the other one was like, that's not a bold prediction.
I know.
I
get that all the time.
Wait, what am I missing here? It's either it is or it isn't.
Right, exactly. It's either super obvious or it's not, or like that's too crazy. Right. I get that all the time.
Yeah.
I used to do a bold
Makes me
predictions
laugh.
column every single year, and I get that all the time. And it's just like,
Moving forward here.
This is why it's important to never read the comments.
Let's just do one more love-hate, Matthew, and then I want to get to some of the some other thoughts that we have to finish up the show. But we talked about OBJ earlier, so let's move to David Montgomery, who I have been saying plenty of times this preseason. I am more optimistic on him than you are.
Yes, you are.
But you're pessimistic specific to this matchup, and it's hard not to be a little bit worried because they're playing against the Rams, a great Rams defensive front and a very, very average at best Chicago Bears offensive line.
Yeah, I have him at running back 19. The consensus is running back 13, as you can see on your screen if you're watching this. last year he played these same Rams.
Yeah.
Okay? 69 yards on 19 total touches. My expectation is that Damian Williams is used a lot more than people think he is. I think he's going to be involved in the passing game here. So I don't – last year down the stretch, it was all David Montgomery. They really didn't have much else behind David Montgomery. This year, I think Damian Williams is much more of a factor. And I'm not saying Damian Williams is worth a start, but bad matchup, doesn't get nearly the workload that you think he will. So I have concerns here about Dave Montgomery. Again, he's always a chance to fall into the end zone. I have him as a top 20 play, so you're likely starting him if you have him. I'm as a very low-end RB2, but again, everyone else has him at 13, which is shocking to me given the matchup with the Rams. That's a very, very good Rams defense.
It is a very good Rams defense. There is some passing game value, though, for David Montgomery, which, as we know, can unlock a potential top 15 or so running back out.
Right. My argument is that Damian Williams gets a lot more of that passing down work than Montgomery does. So we'll see.
Yep,
we will see how it plays out. That's one of those backfields that we're still not sure. One last thing to mention, though. This is a primetime game. And you know who the starting quarterback is for the Chicago Bears in this primetime game?
Is it Justin Fields yet?
It is not Justin Fields yet.
Oh, man. Who's that mean it is? Nick Foles.
Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton. Not
have you ever
great
seen
on prime time.
Have you ever seen Andy Dalton in a primetime game?
Yes, I have. There are not many favorable splits on Andy Dalton.
Saying that.
All right, let's talk about a couple of wide receiver trios. Then we'll get to some of our favorite flex options. So two of them specifically. Let's start in Buffalo, where the Steelers travel, and they play the Bills Sunday. 1 o'clock, I believe, is the game time there, which... I guess it's week one. We're excited about all the games. That's a big-time 1 p.m. Sunday game.
Yes, it is.
The Steelers and the Bills, two teams with big-time hopes for this year. Matthew, there seems to be a clear number one wide receiver for the Steelers. That's Deontay Johnson. But it's a little bit less clear who the number two should be in Pittsburgh. So Deontay Johnson, across the board, ranked inside our top 20. How much optimism do you have around Chase Claypool or JuJu Smith-Schuster, or both?
I have them both as wide receiver threes.
Yeah.
I have JuJu one spot ahead of Chase Claypool. And I think the question becomes, first off, I think it's unlikely that you have both guys on your roster. My guess is that you have one you have Johnson, you have Chase Claypool, you have JuJu, you have one Steelers wide receiver on your roster. But the reason I rank JuJu one spot higher is that I think there's a floor with JuJu that isn't there with Chase Claypool. That I feel like JuJu's always going to get, especially because
six catches or something.
6 catches because he's become this dink and dunk guy that Ben looks for out of the slot. Claypool has, so much explosive talent and could have a monster game, but it could also be a game where you get some JuJu, Deontay Johnson, of course, Najee Harris is going to be a much bigger factor for this offense than last year when they didn't really have a running back that they counted on in a significant way.
Yep.
Harris is going to be a true 3-down back and be part of the passing game as well. So I think if you need more of an upside play, like you're down big after Thursday, like you played against a guy that had Dak and Antonio Brown, then you're like, okay. I think Claypool's the bigger play. If you're looking for more of a floor play, I think it's JuJu Smith-Schuster. So that's how I see the Steelers'
I agree.
offensive wide receivers this week and for the season.
And they're all playable in fantasy this week
Sure.
as flex plays. This is it's a wide receiving group where you could start all three of them on any given basis.
The remnants of what we saw last night in Tampa Bay. I know that Mike Evans did not perform, but you're still playing Mike Evans every week. And after last night, you're probably playing you're always playing Chris Godwin. You might be inclined to play Antonio Brown after last night.
You're always playing Antonio Brown, but listen, it
I
was
don't know,
great.
though. People, no, I'm saying people. I mean,
There were definitely people that benched
people were
Antonio
not,
Brown.
Yeah,
Antonio Brown
we
was
talked
on the
about him all
love list.
preseason, but a lot of people were like, "Dude, that's way too high for him." Like last night,
he was on the love list. Should have read the love list. Here's what I'll say.
We were on it. I'm just saying.
I get it.
Like,
I know. I definitely got.
Brown. People are like, no, definitely not.
I definitely got people saying, yeah, that he was on my bench. I get that. Going forward, I think you got to start Antonio Brown if for some reason he was on your bench. But what I was going to say is, to your point, it wasn't Mike Evans. It was Rob Gronkowski. But the Bucs had 3 fantasy viable pass catchers yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yep. One more here amongst trios. The Jaguars. And before we get to the insights, Stephania, DJ Chark's been out for a while during the preseason because of a finger issue. Is he expected to play on Sunday?
He is. He had a hairline fracture in his finger, and so he's been out since basically the first week of August, but he is off the injury report. Urban Meyer actually already said that DJ Chark was available to play. So, he's good to go.
That is good news there, and he is their best and really only vertical threat right now. Laviska Shenault, Marvin Jones, the other names involved here, Matthew. I've got Laviska highest of the 3. Daniel has him all the way up at 24.
Freaking love Laviska Shenault.
Yeah, find somebody who looks at you the way Daniel looks at Laviska Shenault.
No, seriously, yeah.
I'm all in. I love Laviska Shenault.
I am too.
The idea, like I think that he is going to be a guy. This is one of those like plant your flag things, right?
Okay.
I could be totally wrong, but for me
not.
this week, I think he is somebody that I am super interested in, especially against a really weak Texans defense.
We're going to double down on that in just a second because I have some counter thoughts on that Texans defense, by the way. But Laviska Shenault is inside the top 30 for all of us. Marvin Jones, second for all of us amongst these Jaguars wide receivers. DJ Chark, third. Say this right now. Texans defense will be friskier than we think in this game. I have the Texans winning this game is my upset of the week in Pigskin Pick'em.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Tyrod Taylor steadies the ship on
Wow.
offense, and they win this game.
Fair enough. I will say for people that are in survivor pools,
Yep.
this game does make me nervous.
Huh.
This is one of those. This is a trap game. This
Totally
is
agree.
absolutely a trap game
Yep.
for people that are in survivor pools.
Yep.
I didn't get invited to one this year. I don't know. I'm usually invited to them, and I don't know. Maybe it's.
Wait, did we not? Oh, that was right.
You guys
I guess
do one, and I
wasn't-
didn't get invited?
I wasn't on that.
Right, Matthew?
You
I
aren't
invited
on that.
all you guys to our survivor league that
You're
we
not on
did,
that.
where
Yeah.
we did an 18-team draft.
Yeah, he isn't on that
last
text
night.
thread, right? I'm
Yeah.
seeing he's not.
Shoot.
Wow,
Thought you were
Awkward.
included.
Wow.
not cool, guys.
I guess we can.
Not cool.
Yeah,
Ask-
so flex
I
favorites.
mean, in
yeah,
fairness, it is hard
move
sometimes
on.
for me to get texts on my flip phone, but
Yeah. How
But,
about this?
yeah.
How about
Flex
this?
favorites time.
Anyway,
Flex?
I was going to say is that that's it. This feels like a trap game to you. I have the Jags winning this game, but I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole in a survivor league.
Let's go to the flex favorites.
I
And this
wanted-
is our. Oh, what, Daniel?
Sorry, I just wanted to say Flex Favorites is brought to you by Geico. Whether you rent or own, Geico makes it easy to bundle home and car insurance. Go to geico.com today.
All right, so the idea here is your favorite player
Yeah.
who is ranked outside the top 25 of his position, and we use the initial ranks because when you have a game like last night, like 6 wide receivers are removed. Like a guy,
Sure.
you know, like a guy who was 29 go to 23, but like
Yep.
he was 29 in the initial ranks. So Stephania Bell, let's continue this Laviska Shenault thought. What do you think?
He was one of my sleepers when we wrote about our sleepers and busts early before preseason even started. I love him this year. I think you really can't put a lot of weight on what happened in his rookie season. He had a core muscle injury that gave him poor performance at the combine. He had surgery afterward. We've talked about the challenges rookies face coming in during the COVID era, coming in hurt. Took him a while. He missed games because of a hamstring injury. So I think it's taken him a while to get up to what he can be, but we saw flashes of it in the preseason where he looked really strong. And where he's strong, too, is yards after the catch and the way he can power through people and drag defenders down. Houston allowed the 3rd most yards per catch after the reception last season, 15% worse than average. I like Laviska Shenault as one of my flex favorites.
There you have it. All right, Daniel standing up. He's so excited about that call here. Matthew, your call is.
My call, Brandin Cooks.
Yeah, it is.
Versus Jacksonville. Look, I think people are so out on Houston, and I get it. It's still a professional franchise. Tyrod Taylor's going to start. He's a professional quarterback. They have to throw to someone. And by the way, Field, my expectation here is that you do the free agent fines column.
Yeah.
You're doing that again this year. I bet you Nico Collins makes your list next week.
Interesting.
So
Nice
I think
call.
so I think Nico Collins makes your column next week, but I will say that the 1A in Houston is going to be Brandin Cooks. Very good wide receiver, had 30 fantasy points against the Jaguars last year. He was by far the best wide receiver performance against the Jaguars all season long. I think this game has sneaky shootout potential. I love Brandin Cooks. Give me Brandin Cooks this week. I think he's massively undervalued every single year. I know it's kind of a hot mess in Houston, but they are going to throw the ball, and when they throw it, they're throwing to Brandin Cooks, who's a professional, and I say that as a compliment, a professional wide receiver.
We got about 2 minutes left, so enough time for both Daniel and I to chime in. Mine's Myles Gaskin, just a good, underrated football player. I know there's some concern that Malcolm Brown will have a role at the beginning of the year for Miami, and that's possible, but there's such a limitation on what Malcolm Brown can do for an offense that Myles Gaskin, I think, should get enough passing game volume. And this Patriots run defense, maybe it's hard to evaluate anything the Patriots did last year because it's such a different team. The run defense was vulnerable last year. I think they've cleaned that up to a degree, but it would not surprise me if Myles Gaskin has over 100 total scrimmage yards on Sunday and let's say 5 or so catches. So Myles Gaskin, my favorite flex option outside the top 25 of running backs. Daniel, what do you got?
Mine's going to be Deebo Samuel, and I'm going to say you had me at Detroit. Taking on the Lions is tough, but their secondary is definitely tough here, unfortunately, and I feel like if there's going to be somebody that's out there, they're still figuring out what they all look like together. They haven't had a lot of time on the field, so I expect them to be able to use their time in this game to be able to see what everybody looks like. And I also want to quickly shout out famously not an expert, Ed Eck, for starting both Ezekiel Elliott and Ronald Jones in our guillotine league last night.
Well, it's
Ouch.
possible.
Not an expert.
There's a lot of time left, and it's at least possible that Ed would now be out of that. Someone has to be out after one.
Right.
It
So
could be me.
what this league is sometimes we call it a survivor league here at ESPN, but the premise is the same, which is there are 18 teams, and every week the lowest scoring team gets eliminated, and all the players on that team get put back into the free agent pool, and you do that until there's one team remaining. So
Deep draft with 18 teams, I got to tell you.
I wound up with 3 different
it got ugly
Lions.
in a hurry.
Wow.
I wound up with Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, and Tyrell
That's
Williams.
an offense you want to corner the market on.
Anytime you
Right
can,
there.
yeah. Good lord.
All right. So
Anyway, again, you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun one person.
said
That's
right
all
there.
you have to do. So
Is that the saying? Okay.
Yeah, that's a saying here.
close enough to it.
Real quickly, if you're streaming a defense for some reason this week, I like the Vikings against the Bengals. Field, I know you like the Panthers against the Jets.
Panthers against the Jets. I think that's an inexperienced
And
Jets
I like
offense.
Seahawks against Indy.
There you
Stephania
go.
likes,
Stephania likes
the
Seahawks
Seattle
as
team
well.
against Indianapolis. And guess what?
Fantasy
Fantasy football
football
now. Back, baby.
10 a.m. Eastern time will start most likely on ESPN News. We'll see you on ESPN2 shortly after 10 a.m. Please join myself and Matthew and Stephania and Damian Woody and, of course, Mike Clay and Adam Schefter and some others that will be at games giving us all the latest information. We're back on Monday to recap everything that takes place. Go out there and win your fantasy matchups. Let's go.
For Field, Daniel, Stephania, and Thirsty Kyle, I'm Matthew. Good luck in week 1. Peace out.